Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke, so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Here in Ontario, a snap election was called by Doug Ford. If you watch my channel, you know my feelings on that are, generally speaking, not good. He didn't do it for the people of Ontario. He did it for his own selfish reasons. And because he did it on such short notice, a lot of the other parties were scrambling to get people into their ridings, to get candidates into their ridings, because the next election was officially scheduled for next year. So he called it over a year early. And so for the first time on my channel, I actually got contacted by a potential politician, a team wanting to come on to my platform to have a conversation. So I really, really appreciate that. And that is Brooklin Wallis from Kitchener Centre, and she's running for the Ontario NDP. And we had a lovely chat. I just want to make clear, though, sometimes in the video you might hear me under my breath, or not so much under my breath, but out loud, say something along the lines of my experiences with the NDP not being so great. I just want to make clear my experiences when I tried to become a candidate was for the federal NDP. Brooklyn is running for the provincial NDP. And they are two different organizations. While there is a lot of crossover when it comes to volunteers and sharing spaces and things of that sort, they are their own separate organizations. So when I'm talking smack about the NDP, that's more federal than it is provincial. I have issues with all parties, though. It's not just the NDP. I, as people know, I am a nonpartisan progressive. So that is what I tend to focus on, is policy first. But that said, I super appreciated Brooklyn coming on, and I am open to having conversations with any other provincial candidate should they choose to come onto my channel. You know, I'd love to have a chat with a conservative candidate or a liberal candidate. I'll be nice. Yeah, the people who normally watch my channel are laughing really hard right now. That said, on to the chat. Hello everyone, welcome to Left of the Box. Today I have a special treat for everyone. I got contacted by somebody who is running for provincial office as an MPP here in Ontario. We have an election coming up February 27th. Make sure you go out and vote. That said, welcome to the show, Brooklin Wallis. Is that how I say your name properly? She is a candidate for Kitchener Centre for the Ontario NDP. So welcome. Please build on my introduction.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, my name's Brooklin Wallis. I am running for Kitchener Centre for the Ontario NDP. I also ran in 2022 for City Council, and in 23 I went for the nomination for the Ontario NDP for the by-election that we had here in Kitchener Centre. But I was runner-up both times for those, against the same person who I joke around with about all of the time.
I was looking up a little bit of your information, and you're partaking in a lot of different organizations in the community.
Yes.
So why don't we go over some of that first, and then we'll go over your role and why you wanted to become an Ontario NDP candidate in this particular election. And then, yeah, I might have some challenging questions.
Okay.
We'll have to see
Bring them on.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this goes. So one of the organizations you're involved with is called Fair Vote. It sounds
Yes.
intuitive, but please expand on it.
So Fair Vote is a proportional representation advocacy group. I was on the board of the Waterloo chapter for a year and am still involved in the group and go to occasional events and advocate with them. I just had to step back from the board itself, just for capacity reasons. Um, but Fair Vote has been pushing for proportional representation for a long time, electoral reform, and just better forms of democracy, getting rid of first past the post and more accurately representing the nation in parliament.
And what does proportional representation look like to you? Because I know there's a few options when it comes to that particular thing. There's mixed member representation.
Yeah,
There's the other word that I can't think of off the top of my head when it's
I can
ranked
never remember
balloting.
that one either.
Yeah, ranked balloting.
Ranked ballot isn't proportional,
Mhm.
but it is a better form of election of balloting than the one that we have. Um, I'm not picky about the specific form of proportional representation that we end up choosing, as long as it is chosen democratically. There are a couple different ways, but the base idea is making all votes or as many votes in every election count as possible. The go-to example I always use is Kitchener-Waterloo has 5 MPP or MPs. There's Kitchener Centre, Kitchener South Hespeler, Kitchener-Conestoga, Waterloo, and Cambridge. Right now, if each one of those was split, let's just say, imagine we were in a two-party system and it was split 51%, 49%, any party. And each one of those was split in that same exact way. Each 5 ridings was split in those exact same 5 ways. Then we would be sending 5 candidates of whatever party that is, of party A, and 0 candidates of party B, even though the votes were essentially 50-50. That is wrong to me. And proportional representation is about fixing that wrong.
Hmm.
Instead of each riding having one person that is just first past the boat, first past the post, whoever gets the most wins, it would be, let's say, instead of 5 ridings with 1 MP, it would be 1 riding with 5 MPs, and we would send 3 members of party A and 2 members of party B.
Mhm.
That way, there are people who are represented uh, of both parties. Or in the current system, it might be 2 liberals, 2 NDPers, and 1 conservative in this region, or 2 conservatives and 1 NDP, or whatever mix. It would mean that people actually get represented even if they aren't in the most popular basket. And I think we really need that in our country.
Yeah, the example I tend to point to right now is the last provincial election. Doug Ford got a majority with 18% of possible votes. But if the NDP, the Liberals, and the Greens, they got 25%. So combined, they should be able to have more seats than Doug Ford, but that's not how first past the post works. So
Yeah,
even though he has less
and
combined, he's in charge.
and it might be sacrilege for me as an NDPer to say, but the Liberals got, if not more votes than us, like the same amount of votes, and we have 20 members in parliament and in legislature, and they have 8,
Hmm.
and that is just wrong to me.
Hmm. Yeah, the whole first past the post is just so frustrating because it keeps a certain type of group in power, that being,
Yeah.
generally speaking, the conservatives and the liberals, both provincially and federally. Provincially,
Yes.
depending on the province, there's a little bit more fluctuation, but federally, it's always just been the conservatives and the liberals.
The NDPers have been opposition before, but
Mhm.
that's not it's not the same.
Yeah. Your hope is that provincially we could maybe switch to something that is more proportional representation?
Yes. Um, that is the goal of the NDP as well, is to move to proportional representation. And when it comes to cities, allow them to do ranked ballot at least. I know that London was going to implement it. They had voted to implement it. Then Doug Ford removed the ability for municipalities to have better forms of voting systems because he knows what it would mean.
So much for little
If we had
government.
ranked ballot, which I don't like as much
Mhm.
as proportional, but it's still better. I don't think the Conservatives would ever win again in their current form.
I'm under the impression that if people actually voted on policies, the conservatives would never get in the first place.
No, no.
Because nobody actually likes what Doug Ford does. They just like how he presents it.
And he makes big promises and then breaks those promises.
Mhm.
Like during the 2022 election, he said outright that he's not privatizing healthcare. And then look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, look what happened.
Yeah, I'm chipping away at that one. I covered that
Yeah.
topic a lot on my channel.
Mm.
Of course, my cat hears me talking. There we go. Say hi, Abernathy.
Hello.
Okay. So another organization that you are part of is called Spectrum. Please explain
Yes.
Spectrum to the viewers.
Spectrum is Waterloo Region's rainbow community gathering space. We provide a lot of peer groups for people struggling with identity or just looking for community. We have groups for every color of the rainbow, and as well as we help with a lot of sort of outreach, sort of leaning things. We don't do everything in the community because we let existing groups do the things that they're best at. We're trying to expand what we do, and I think Spectrum is a really special organization. We have a community here in KW that I just do not see in anywhere else in Canada the way that we have it here.
Yeah, there's definitely been my sense of the situation, a rise in anti-LGBTQ plus hatred. So
Oh, of course.
organizations like this seems to be a lot more valuable in a community to just let people know they're not alone.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more to the rise recently that we've been seeing? I think a lot of it's been instigated initially by Donald Trump's first time as president, and it's just kind of
Yeah.
gotten out of control since.
Yes. I've been calling it out for years as well. Um, it has we've turned into a culture war issue because the right knows that on policy they can't win. The right needs to target minority groups because that's how they win. We've seen the exact playbook being used against trans people, be used against homosexual people and lesbians and gay people, like the original gay panic in the 80s and so was because they needed a culture war issue. and they're recycling those things because they needed another culture war issue. And you can see that that has worked. We are becoming this massive problem in society. People think that we need to save women's sports or women's spaces when trans women are not out there dominating women's sports. People are not being assaulted by trans women in women's bathrooms at any rate that is justifiable to then react to. It is clearly just a boogeyman that people are using to distract from the actual issues like class and workers' rights and tax. Like, how are we taxing the uber rich? We can quickly distract to immigration and trans people and protect the children and protect women stuff.
Do you still think this area, the Waterloo region, is safe for queer folks, or is it becoming a little bit more uncertain these days?
It is becoming more uncertain, but I do also think that it's safe.
Hmm.
In my experience canvassing over the last couple of years, I've had one person say some sort of mean things, I think mostly by accident, but just sort of mean things. And one person who was like, "Get off my property. I know what you are," type transphobia.
Hmm.
Um, but that's out of thousands of doors
Hmm.
and hundreds of people that I have spoken to. And I'm not fooling myself that I think because we had a pleasant interaction that they aren't transphobic or have that would ideas about me that I would like to talk more about. But the actual, like, that's not where unsafety comes from. Unsafety comes from the people who yell at me on the street or yell slurs at me as they walk by. And yes, that does happen, but I still feel safe.
Hmm. So I know um, from my own experience trying to get involved with politics, a lot of women in particular tend to be a little bit more reluctant to run. And I think part of it is the door knocking, the being out around people, the possibility for harassment. So far, your experiences, though, have been relatively positive with the city council and the ONDP.
Yes, absolutely. I face discrimination, and I'm not gonna lie, there is discrimination against me in all of these places. But when it comes to safety, I am less safe because I am a pretty young woman than I am, like, it's so much
Mhm.
more that than being trans.
Would you have any advice for queer folks or women that might be a little bit wary about getting involved because of that?
For one, don't do it alone. Because for one, like, to expand on that, you can't do this alone. You can't win an election by yourself, not just because of the amount of work, but also just people need to vote for you and they need to believe in you. And if you don't have people believe in you enough to then ask to volunteer, then, or if you're refusing that volunteering, like, you aren't doing it properly. You aren't, because you need to reach more people than you can as one individual person.
Hmm.
Running in an election is hard, and there is so much stuff to do while you're all supposed to be out canvassing all the time, that you physically do not have the ability or the time or the mental capacity to do it all by yourself.
Mhm.
And safety-wise, I feel much safer when I have someone with me. And I have had interactions with people that I have then turned to my volunteer next to me saying, "I'm so glad that you are here right now."
Another organization says that you are co-founder of the Waterloo Region chapter of ACORN. Please
Yes.
explain to the audience what ACORN is other than a nut.
Yes. So ACORN is a tenants union of sorts. It's not specifically tenants union, but it sort of is. Um, I co-founded it, like the Waterloo chapter, because there were a couple houses, affordable housing units that were being bulldozed for a parking lot because a local funeral home wanted to expand a little bit and needed extra parking space because of parking minimums, and owned some land next to it that people lived on and decided to get rid of it. And since then, or immediately after founding it, we discovered uh, or we made contact with a building that was being evicted because of renovations
Mhm.
happening. Sometimes it's legitimate, most of the time it isn't. And we knew that this wasn't legitimate because the landlord who owns the property, who had sent those things, owns a lot of property and has had a website open. Who he took it down since, but he had a website open with videos of him talking about how he evicts people to raise rents so that he can maximize profits of every house that he owns. Like he said it
Mhm.
just in he said the words out loud.
Mhm.
Um, his name was Michael Klein, and he has become a little bit more of a target since then because he does this. Sorry. Yeah, because he does this, and it is unfair and unjust, and we have had protests and all of that. I sort of stepped away from the organization after setting it up, and I've just been watching my baby grow, basically.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit more about the need for affordable housing in this
Oh,
area as well as Ontario? Because I know that's also an election issue.
yeah, that is what I've been focusing on for the last couple years. The reason I ran in 2022 was because a year before, there was a local encampment of 6 people that was evicted using an actual bulldozer. Just went went up, destroyed their tents, destroyed their property, through physical force, and I thought that was unjust, and it made me mad, and I always say it made me mad and no one stopped me. But I think a little bit more accurately, it made me mad and no one could stop me. Since then, I've joined different, like, strong towns, Waterloo, and yes, in my backyard, Waterloo region, and have been pushing affordable housing for a long time. We need so many different types of housing in Waterloo region, and I'm not anti skyscraper, but I do think that we need to be building more than just skyscrapers. And I also know that that's part of why we have such a problem, is because we either build skyscrapers or single family housing, and the single family housing is so expensive. It's over $1 million or $800,000 or something. Like, it's around $1 million for most of these things, especially after taxes and land transfer tax and all of that. That if you can't just straight up afford $1 million, you go for the apartment buildings, that because that's the only other option. And because we also have this wonderful tech industry and Google and Ford and all of these different high tech companies, the people who work at those and get really good wages are competing for the same housing that everyone else in the city is fighting for. And that just means we don't get housing.
Yeah. What kind of policies would you want to see put in place to help with like the reduction of the cost of housing, of rent in particular, should the NDP get into power this election?
So basically, our platform is building more homes, allowing fourplexes, four-story walk-ups, stuff like that throughout the whole province, and allowing the missing middle to start filling in, as well as providing competition to the market in the form of public housing. Uh, the provincial government has been out of the game when it comes to public housing and when it comes to just housing in general for 30 years. We stopped doing it in the 90s and we have been feeling it ever since. We need to provide social housing
Mhm.
as well as really pushing co-ops and just other forms of housing that are not just strictly profit made.
Mhm. What
Right.
is the missing middle?
Missing middle is exactly what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that we only build high rises or single family. It's everything in between.
Mhm.
It is townhouses that in most of Kitchener isn't allowed. It is just stacked townhouses. It is four-story walk-ups. It is 6 or 8 story apartment buildings. It's stuff that is still, as some housing advocates like to refer to it as, human scale, which I don't really like the phrasing because it implies that apartment buildings don't create community or humans don't like living in it or something. And if you like it, then you're not human. But it still makes those s- small density increases throughout the whole city. If even just half of the city, or even like let's say like 10% of the city removed their single family house and placed a four-story walk-up with 16 units, that is a massive increase in housing affordability and in housing in the city. And it really matches the demand that we've been seeing because Kitchener is wonderful and people want to live here.
Mhm. Would the NDP do anything about rent control?
Oh, yes. That is another big thing. We want proper rent control as well. Um, we
What do you mean
want it
by, yeah, what do you mean by
so
proper?
yeah, so proper rent control, meaning evicting someone doesn't benefit you. Uh, Evicting someone doesn't suddenly have a massive monetary benefit, or someone moving out doesn't suddenly mean you can increase the rent by $1,000. We want housing to remain the the cost of housing. We want the cost of housing to mostly just increase with inflation and not with speculation and all of these things that currently affect it. We want rent control so that you can stay living where you live. You don't need to worry about suddenly getting a 50% increase, because if you live in a recently built building, they can just increase it whatever they want.
Hmm. Yeah, that was one of Doug Ford's policy back in, I think he implemented it 2018, where all buildings built after 2018, there is no rent control.
He implemented it almost immediately coming into power, I think in 2016, but it needed a couple years
Hmm.
to come into place. But one of the first things he did was get rid of rent control.
And because of that, rents have skyrocketed in this area. And like,
Weird how that connects,
yeah,
huh?
yeah,
It's
because
almost like it's related.
mhm. Yeah, because I'm somebody who relies on Ontario Disability, ODSP, and our entire checks does not cover the cost of market
No.
rent one bedroom apartment anymore. And then Doug Ford is also refusing to increase ODSP to a livable wage. Like for the first few years, he didn't increase it at all. And
Yeah,
then increased it and said, "Oh, aren't I being so great by increasing it by this
tied it to
amount?"
inflation and said, "Oh, thanks."
But it was actually
Like, "Oh,
less.
you're so welcome."
Yeah, it was like it was less than what was originally promised, but since we had gone
Yeah,
without, it's like, well, now we're giving you this bonus. Uh, it's just,
which is what Ford does.
mhm.
He makes promises, pulls back on it, or ruins the system that he made the promises about, and then promises even better things and continues to not do it.
Mhm.
He loves making promises and hates following through with them.
Mhm. What would
When
the
it comes to
yeah,
ODSP, we have been fighting since 2022 to straight up double the amounts of ODSP and OW, and then have them continue to rise with inflation as well.
mhm. That was just what I was about to ask you.
Yeah, I
Uh,
could tell. I could feel it.
for most people who are in my situation, not being able to have the freedom to move can put you in very hazardous situations if you have an abusive landlord, an abusive partner, abusive neighbors, or you just want to move because maybe somewhere there's a job that's more accommodating to whatever disability you have, or you want to move in with a partner, or any of these sorts of things. We're unable to do that because if you find a place that you can afford, you stay there and you hang on there, even if the building starts falling apart around you.
Yeah, it's wage slavery.
Hmm.
It is the same sort of thing that a bad company can do if you've been working at a place that treats you terribly and underpays you and tries to steal your wages and do all of these terrible things, but it's your only option, you're out of luck, or it feels like you're out of luck. It is scary to even bring it to workplace security insurance board or safety insurance board. If you are injured, or you don't want to bring it up to anyone, because if it comes back to you and you lose your job, you're homeless.
The last articles I came across was saying that in unhoused encampments, there's over 80,000 people in Ontario right now.
Yeah, it has tripled in the last couple years. It is expected to double or triple again in the next few years. It has been getting really bad, and it is an invention of our government. Like, homelessness in general is an invention.
Hmm.
Like, we created that as a society by saying by putting all of these rules around specific where you can live and what types of housing you can build and where you can do it and all of that. And then allowing people to start buying up every piece of housing and raise the rents to whatever they want, like we are tacitly endorsing this system by not fixing it.
Mhm.
And we are saying homelessness is justifiable by not doing everything that we can to help. And we aren't, because the NDP's never hasn't been in government in 40 years. And the Liberals and the NDP don't, or the Liberals and the Conservatives don't really seem to have any desire to actually fix this problem.
Mhm.
Homelessness is a fixable issue. It is a solved issue, and we just aren't using the solutions.
Mhm. Okay, so yet another organization I see that you're a part of is you're currently chair of Kitchener Climate Change and Environmental Committee.
I was the chair for the last 2 years.
Mhm.
At the last meeting, we started our new term, and I'm not the chair anymore. Uh, thank goodness, because I do as you can see, I do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So being the chair of the Climate Change and Environmental Committee at the City of Kitchener was so cool and so much fun, and I'm so glad to be remaining on that committee because we do some really cool stuff. We get to see really cool stuff. Uh, Basically, in short, whenever city council is going to be voting on something environment or climate change related, it comes to us first. And we are a team of 14 or so, depending on the day and the time of the term, um, experts in environmental science or some related industry. And we all get to weigh in with our expertise about solar panels or installation techniques or like there was one person in the last term who was a part of Bird Friendly Cities, an organization that uh, is trying to make cities more habitable for birds, better habitats for birds. And he has a lot of expertise about that. And we just have a whole group of people with really varied levels of expertise and focuses in different fields that I really, really love.
Mhm. I'd say, like, why are you part of this organization? But I think we know what climate change is doing right now. There's a
Yeah,
definite need for this sort of thing.
I've also done schooling in environmental technologies and more on the trade side of things, but uh, I really the reason I got involved with it in the first place was because it was something I thought that at the end of my life that I could say to my grandchildren or my great nieces and nephews that I was proud that I was involved with the shift to green energy, which is something that we need to be doing. And I found a different way to be going at that.
Mhm. Okay, let's move more now towards your campaign. I
Yes.
read something that if you become the MPP, you will donate part of your salary.
Yes. I said that and I mean it, but I also it came out more as like a campaign promise than I meant it to be. I don't want to be campaigning on what I will be doing with my funds after the election. So I try not to talk about it more. Uh, outside of, yeah, I s I say what's on my mind, and I say what my convictions are, and sometimes I should be sending it through a team of people before I send it out onto Twitter.
I got in trouble with that with the NDP before.
So, and I didn't get reprimanded by anyone in the
Mhm.
NDP. It was just oh, people are taking this more cynically than I meant it than I thought.
Mhm.
Um, Seeing it more as like a bribe or uh like a reward, like, oh, if you give me this, I'll give money back to the community. When really I just mean it like this. I think it is important for government to represent everyone, and that includes low income workers and medium income workers. And it's hard to do that at the same level that you would just having low income once you are making the salary of an MPP. And I've thought about that for a long time as I've been considering my career in politics and possible positions. And it was a sort of revelation of like, oh, I can just give the money away. I don't need to, oh yeah, I can just, oh yeah. Um,
I feel this is something
yeah,
that the people who would find it cynical are the people who aren't living in poverty.
I
Whereas,
think so.
yeah, because I know people who live with poverty, when they have a little extra, they're the ones most likely to end up helping, doing the mutual aid type thing, helping others because
Absolutely.
of a lived experience. And so if I had a salary that was magically so much that my living needs were all met and stuff, I don't see the need of like holding on to everything so desperately when there's somebody else I know that
Yeah.
needs to get groceries that week or something of that sort.
So much of it also comes from the fact that like last year, my take home salary was a few $1,000s. Like,
Mhm.
I've been struggling with unemployment because a couple reasons. One is definitely just transphobia, but another one is I've started a tenants union and uh, I
Yeah.
am sort of a unionization risk. And I've run for office, and people sort of know that I'm going to be running for office again. And that can just be like, oh, she's not going to be around for that long. All of those things definitely come into account. But like half of the salary that I would be making as MPP is more than enough.
Mhm.
Uh, when I was running for city council, I didn't even know what the salary was before for like the first 2 or 3 months of campaign. Um, and it's in like the mid 60s or something. And that is still like $20,000 more than I've ever made in my life.
Mhm.
Um, Not total, but like in 1 year. And I was already feeling totally comfortable at the level I was at. Um, I know that having a large income, you like people will often fall into buying more expensive things than they might need to and just living at an overall more expensive level of like quality of life. And I don't want to become out of touch with not just quality of life, because I mean, I'm not going to be living out of shoe boxes and tin cans and stuff, but I also just don't see any need to live more expensively than I have to.
Mhm. No,
But
that's
moving on
something.
from that point, because it's not a major point of my campaign.
Yeah, that's something I can completely understand living with poverty. One of the things that you were mentioning on the NDP information page about you
Mhm.
was you want a place that is safe to walk beside cars.
Yes. Um, for a long time, I've been advocating for better pedestrian infrastructure.
Hmm.
That's something that I really want to focus on if I am elected, is making this a Ontario-wide platform of Vision Zero, which is the idea that we can solve traffic deaths.
Hmm.
We can choose to do that. We can engineer roads and cities and places like that to prevent death and prevent accidents, not just expect or hope that drivers never make a mistake, but make it so that if a driver does make a mistake, or when a driver does make a mistake, that it doesn't lead to loss of life. Part of that ties into cities are just nicer when it's safe to walk around, when you're walking not next to a 3-lane or 2 or 4-lane 80-mile-per-hour road or 80 kilometers an hour road. Jeez. I'm Canadian. I don't know why I said miles there. Um, just lost 2 points in the poll.
Especially with everything that's happening between the two countries right now. I don't
Yeah.
know. Quickly,
Um,
tell everyone your favorite topping on poutine, other than cheese
oh,
and gravy.
shawarma.
Okay, you got those
A
points
shawarma
back.
I think shawarma poutine is genuinely one of the best inventions Canada and immigration has ever brought to the world.
I'll have to give that one a try.
It's my favorite is Ace Burgers in downtown Kitchener. Shawarma poutine there, mwah,
I'll,
is my favorite food.
I'll have to give that a try. Okay, so
Yeah,
back to the accessible
yes.
cities.
Yeah, so I don't have a car. I have a bike and a bus pass, and luckily I live downtown, so I can do that a little bit easier. But there's also a lot of roads that don't feel comfortable to walk next to.
Hmm.
Walking next to this big massive road is way less comfortable than even just having a layer of trees next to you, in between you and the road, or a nice separated bike lane between you
Hmm.
and the road.
Yes, you are pro
Uh,
bike lane, from what I've read.
yes, very much so. And people might think whatever about that, but I will just say that research shows that bike lanes are better for traffic, that they are increase safety by quite a lot, that they make then and that people then start using bikes more because of the safe infrastructure. You have to build it before you have a really great biking culture in your city, but if you build it, they will come.
Hmm. Yeah. So in your riding, Kitchener Center, it has a bit of a unique, I would say, electoral history because they've
Yes,
actually just elected all of the parties. So currently there's Green, then previously it was NDP, then previously it was Liberal, then previously it was Conservative. So
yes,
they've
it's
really
the
just
real
gone through,
rainbow riding.
yeah, they've really just gone through it all. Would you say that it's because the area has just started to go more left and that this is an ongoing trend? Or do you think there's the possibility that it could snap back to Conservative?
I'll say right away, I don't think that there's any chance of the Conservatives winning in Kitchener Centre this year because the candidate is the same candidate from the by-election who I never saw, is from far out of town and is pretty much like a paper ballot candidate, just
Mhm.
a paper candidate, just so that they have someone there. They probably chose him again because they already had the signs from last time. Um, and he underperformed so massively during the by-election that if he had the same amount of votes this election, the other 4 parties, that's including the New Blue, we could all split our vote entirely equally, and it would still be one of us who goes. Like, he
Mhm.
did so badly. The reason that we have all of these things, yes, it is a left-leaning city for sure, but I also think that Kitchener tends to vote for more for the people who's running than the party itself.
Mhm.
Laura May Lindo is beloved in the city, and she was our NDP before, and our NDP MPP before our current one, and people still love her, and they aren't partisan
Mhm.
towards the party that she was running in, and I think that's good. I think people should be voting based on what that MPP will be able to bring to
Mhm.
Kitchener, and not just on ideological
Mm.
lines.
What are you hoping to bring to Kitchener Center?
I think a voice of people who are not represented, not just demographically, but I'm a renter. How many MPs or MPPs are renters and have current experience in the present day housing market and
Mhm.
rental market? Um, I am such a fighter that like the needs of Kitchener will be heard. And I know that because the first time I met Marit Stiles, I said something to her that was then actually word for word in her first ever ad campaign.
Mhm.
I can make people listen. I'm good at making people listen and people hear the information I give them. And part of that is that I just don't quit. I will either learn I'm wrong and then I'll be right, or I know I'm right and I
Mhm.
will convince you of that.
Mhm. Now, I was mentioning earlier that I do have a couple more challenging questions, but
Mhm.
your team is the first one to actually reach out to me for this type of interview. No other candidate has, and I've only ever had one other politician on for just regular interviews,
Mm.
Mike Morris, to talk about the disability benefit and other issues, and he's at the federal level. I am biased. I have favorites. And so, I don't want to be too hard. And these are questions that are more about the party as a whole
Yeah.
and how it runs. That there's a lot of frustration from people who've been involved with the NDP are feeling right now, especially if we head over to your counterpart in Hamilton Center.
Yes.
There is a fantastic person running there, Sarah Jama, who
I
used to
know.
be part of the NDP, but she was kicked out of caucus, and they had the best opportunity to bring her back into the fold without any pomp and circumstance or anything when Sarah applied to become the candidate for the Ontario NDP in Hamilton Centre, but they rejected her and they're running a candidate against her.
Mhm.
That is not a popular take.
No, it's not.
And how is it that we're supposed to have faith in a party that can do such an unforced error like that?
So I can't talk too much about what happened in the first place, not because I'm not allowed to, but because I just wasn't that I wasn't involved in that level of the party to at that point in time to know really that
Mm-hmm.
much. But when it comes to Sarah Jama's vetting, I also wish that we could have approved her, but I also don't think that we were wrong or that they were wrong to deny the vetting because she was already registered with Elections Ontario as an independent candidate. She was already able to accept donations and spend those donations on signs, and clearly she already had. Um, it's no different to me than if like a Green Party candidate was trying to get vetted for the NDP. And they've already been chosen by the Green Party. They're already signed up with Elections Ontario. Their name's already on the ballot as a Green Party candidate. And then they apply. Like the answer is just going to be no. If nothing for nothing else, then it gets very confusing with Elections Ontario, and donations can become very confusing. Like if you're only allowed to donate so much to a party, like how does it get split? How does that like if suddenly she's a part of the party again, like what's going on there and all of those things. We also are running a candidate there because we have to. Um, our constitution states that we run a candidate in uh, everywhere that has a constituency association. Um, so to avoid it, we would need to either disband the NDP association there, which we wouldn't have been able to do in such a short time after finding out, uh, after doing the nomination thing. But also, like, so we could disband the whole organization in Hamilton Center, which would be a lot of work, or we could have a constitutional crisis and have to rewrite our constitution, and um, that is a lot. So we are running a candidate, and I can't speak to more of the decision making process in that because I'm not from
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton Center. I'm not, yeah, like these things are happening outside of my control. Um, I really do want to see a path back to the party for Sarah. Um, but I don't think it was ever going to happen when she was already registered as a candidate.
Mm-hmm. I have a running joke on my channel that
Mhm.
I put up a picture of Bonnie Crumby and Merritt Stiles and say, you can't even tell them apart. And it's always true. And it's not just
Mhm.
because, and as I say, it's not just because they kind of look alike. It's also the way they present in the camera, the way they answer questions, their policies, like everything about them is so similar. So
I
what
mean,
is
I
it
would
that,
say our policies are very
well,
different,
that's what
but
I was going to ask. Like, what separates the Ontario NDP from the Ontario Liberals?
during Bonnie's nomination race, she was talking about how the Liberals had gone too far left and she wanted to move more to the center. The NDP are not a centrist party. We do not believe that centrist ideas, like that, like these neoliberal ideas of letting the conservatives do whatever they want and then trying really hard to maintain the status quo uh, is what we need to be doing. Yeah, they would undo some things from the Ford government, but they aren't moving us anywhere other than where we were before Ford came into power. The NDP want to move us left. They want to actually improve things. They want to, instead of just trying desperately to maintain the status quo, we want to improve the status quo.
Mhm.
We believe that change for the better is possible, and not just possible, but morally mandated.
Mhm. And what are some of the policies that they want to implement? Do you see that making the best change?
That we want to?
Hmm. Like some of your
I
favorite
think,
policies, I guess.
yeah, well, in one form, the grocery mandate that we or a rebate that we just announced of, um, helping families across Ontario pay for groceries, I think is a wonderful way to help ease the cost of living while and then having that paired with an office of people that would be preventing grocery stores from rapidly inflating their prices, making sure that we are not price gouging, making sure that we are getting that Ontarios are getting their money's worth, while also providing them with the funds to actually pay for food in the times that we live in, I think is incredible. I also think that the NDP is the only party that is worker focused. We are made of unions. We have the support of many, many unions. I was endorsed by the Labor Council last night, by the Waterloo Region Labor Council last night. And these policies that we implement, that we have been talking about making it easier to unionize. The Laurier Workers or a Teachers Association has been trying to unionize for a couple years now. They decided to unionize a while ago, but they haven't been able to actually get all the paperwork through because there's so many different steps to it now. And we want to just make it easier again because we believe in collective bargaining. We believe that people have the right to easily associate with each other.
I wanted to end on something. I'm going to share the screen, so just hold on one second. I saw this tweet not too long ago, and I kind of felt it resonate with me because there is that
Mm,
talk from the Liberal Party about, oh, we've moved too far left and everything that the right wing conservatives are doing when it comes to marginalized groups. And this idea of people just seem to be afraid to talk about certain issues because they're worried about looking woke. And so your tweet
mm,
here, I'll just read it out for people. Well, actually, you're here. You can read out your own tweet and have
yeah,
it done in your voice. So I'm not trying to
yeah,
to
that's a good
impersonate
idea.
you. Oh, sorry. Crap. We have to start that over again.
Oh,
The way that I'm recording it is all messed up. I forgot to
okay.
change this screen. No, not that. There. There we go. I will do something else to just have my little preamble still show up on screen. People who are aware of my channel know how much I suck at this part of it. Because what you're seeing on the screen isn't what is being recorded. It's a different layout. And
Okay.
so I have to remember to switch over on both.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll put up something entertaining on the screen for people to see while I was talking over that. Anyway, why don't you read your tweet here? There's a few in this little thread here.
It's weird being the second trans woman nominated by the ONDP while there's active attacks against my community south of the border. I have friends who are at risk of losing healthcare. It also sort of feels like I shouldn't talk about it, else I'll be seen as quote unquote the trans one. But I cannot just ignore the state of the states. My friends, my sisters and brothers and siblings are targets in an attempt to erase trans people. The US government has erased the T, quote unquote, on its websites. I care about Ontario. I care about Kitchener, but I care about Americans too. So I must denounce the executive orders Trump has used to target my American trans family. They are unscientific, fueled by fear-mongering and culture war garbage, and are nothing but attempts to force trans people into hiding. Stay strong. We can get through this.
That really resonated with me because I'm non-binary. My passport, birth certificate, driver's license, they're all marked with the X gender.
Mm,
I don't even know if I can travel to the States right now.
I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can either.
Yeah,
I know Momentum Canada has been
Mhm.
petitioning to get clearer guidelines from the Canadian government on that.
Yeah, it's such a time of uncertainty when it comes to this sort of thing. Has there been any issues with you being in the party speaking out on these issues?
I haven't heard anything back.
Mm,
People are excited to have me in the party.
mhm,
Not just for the diversity number or whatever, but because I've been doing this type of work for years. I've been at rallies, I've hosted rallies, I've been working with organizers across Canada for a couple years. I got quote tweeted by J.K. Rowling for calling her
mhm,
out on Holocaust denial, um,
mm,
and all of those things. I speak my mind on these things, and I trust the party to back me up on it, honestly.
mhm,
Uh, we have a wonderful non-binary member of provincial parliament from Toronto, Kristen Montam, um, who is awesome. And I haven't actually gotten a chance to meet them yet, but I will make sure I do because I think they're very cool. And they've put in some really great bills that, of course, the conservatives shoot down immediately, but it makes me believe that the party believes in these things, that trans healthcare is healthcare, that we should be able to access it freely and easily and without medical gatekeeping from doctors who don't know what they're talking about. Um, and I trust that the NDP will have my back on that.
mhm. Yeah, I guess this is a bit of a, oh, what's the word when it's you already kind of know the answer to the question. There's a term for
Leading
that.
question?
Not a leading. Um, oh, people who watch my channel know I do this all the time and I rely on
Mm.
people in the sandbox to read my mind. It's rhetorical. Rhetorical.
Mm.
That's it, a rhetorical question. Do you think it makes a party stronger to be more bold on issues that might be seen as too woke?
Yes, of course. I think giving too much credibility to the people complaining about woke um, just empowers the argument in the first place because you're giving them credibility. If you just say, no, that's stupid, or no, trans people are great and trans women are women, or and trans men are men. And if they try to yell at you about that, you just say, "No, I just believe this. This is like this isn't a debatable subject. This is just a fact, you make the culture war less of a war and more of just like you just turn it into nothing. Because having these like conversations about these things are important and necessary to have, but debates about these things, debates about whether or not I should have rights is not is just nothing.
Mhm.
Of should I have rights? Yes, of course. I'm a human being.
Mhm.
Should immigrants have rights? Yes, of course. They're human beings. Like, and giving even a little bit of ground in that fight, saying, okay, maybe these queer people should have rights, but not these ones, is like you've given the whole game away. Because as we've seen, they'll take the inch, and then they'll take the inch, and then they'll take the inch, and then they'll take the inch ad infinitum. We've seen, I think it was Illinois or Indiana. Indiana's a city, isn't it? There was a state
It's an American thing.
that
Eh.
that requested the Supreme Court now take another look at Obergefell, which was the Supreme Court decision that legalized gay marriage. These things, like when you watch them put up the dominoes, don't let them hit the first one. Don't say, okay, you can hit one domino, please. You can only hit that first one or those first two, because that's not how dominoes work. And we've seen that time and time again over the last all of human history.
Okay. So, how can people support your campaign?
The ONDP is built by people, by workers, by low income people. So when it comes to our like the way to help us, it is by joining the people power of progressivism, of the leftist movement, and coming out with me and knocking doors or making phone calls or even just taking a whole bunch of my literature and my canvas cards and just dropping them on doorsteps, not even ringing the door, just acting as like a mail person for me, sharing my voice and sharing posts about me and sharing my actual posts, telling all of your friends to help out as well, or even just telling them to vote for me, and also telling them to vote. Young people, the people that are most likely to vote for me, are also the people least likely to vote. And as young people, you need to know that that is giving up power. That is letting people who are 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 times your age make the decisions that will impact you for the rest of your life without any impact from you and any engagement from you. And of course, donations. Anyone in Ontario can donate to me, and that helps uh, fund the literature, and it helps pay for people, pay for volunteers team to actually do this full time, and it really helps when it comes to advertising and doing a lot of different stuff. Getting my face, getting the team and all of that out there, getting the message out there, unfortunately costs quite a bit of money. So any amount, any small donations can really help. The NDP has more donors than all of the other parties combined, but we have less money than the other parties because it's so much more small donations. We aren't getting massive $3,400 donations from large CEOs, big companies, and every employee in that company. We are getting $100 donations, $50, $10 donations from 10 times as many people.
Thank you so much for coming on. I
Thank you so
wish
much for
you,
having me, Sandy.
yeah, I wish you luck in your career.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, everyone, left of the box, stay tuned, vote. If you're in Ontario, February 27th, advanced polling is already available. I believe you can already go to your electoral office at any time too and vote if because this was such a
And you
freaking
can
short
request
notice.
a mail-in ballot online
Mhm.
until the 21st.
Yeah, because this is a very short notice election.
Yes.
And people can tune into my channel to hear me bitch about that. Thanks. Okay, so yet another reminder for people here in Ontario. Election Day is February 27th. I will be live streaming the results. Hopefully I don't break down into a puddle of tears, but as Brooklyn and I were talking, the biggest issue is just getting people out to vote. The largest voter base is non-voters. If people actually voted for policies, the Conservatives would never get in. So it is so, so important that you get out and vote, you bring other people out and vote, and just really, really encourage people to do this because they don't realize the power that they have to change all the things that they generally speaking complain about the government with. If they vote, they actually have a chance of changing the system to making, life more affordable for people in Ontario, to expand our health care, to get a family doctor, to, get rent control back in place, all the things that people tend to complain about, but then never vote over. So again, with only 18% of possible votes last time, Doug Ford got a majority. We need to make sure that doesn't happen again. So please, please, please go out and vote and check out my channel February 27th for live results. And I will try to have somebody on stream with me in case I need the moral support, but who knows? It could be a close call. Doug Ford has been plummeting in the polls right now because of, him just being him and people learning out more about who he is. That said, don't forget to like and subscribe and do all that sort of fun stuff. And with that, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.